Good afternoon. I'm Hartsville, Trousdale County Mayor Stephen Chambers. I'm here doing the public meeting number 2 via Zoom for the county's 2020 Local Parks and Recreation Fund grant application. The applications include inclusive play equipment and other ADA improvements at Trey Park. Just some basic information, the county demographics, the population of the last 2019 Census Bureau estimate was 11,284. Of that, 17.9% of the population is under the age of 18, 5.2% under the age of 5, and 13.2% under the age of 65 are disabled. This is a map of the property for Hartsville Trousdale County's Hartsville City Park. This is where we're proposing to do the project. This puts it in relation to the major roads in the Cumberland River. It is in the existing park. We're not proposing to acquire any additional property. The project will be completely within the existing boundary of the park. It'll be specifically the ADA parking spaces, ramps, sidewalk leading into Trey Park, as well as some improvements inside Trey Park itself to make it more ADA accessible and include some inclusive play equipment for people who have mobility issues or maybe have been diagnosed with autism. The goal of the project is to provide not just inclusive play options for children with mobility issues, but all children. This piece of equipment you see right here on this slide is called a We Go Round. It is a merry-go-round that has internal braking system, so it will not go so fast that it slings people off. It'll only go to a certain speed. It mounts flush into the ground, so it's easily accessible by people who are in wheelchairs or other things, and also any other person could come in and sit down and go on the We Go Round as well. We'll also be providing some cool down spaces in the form of a piece of climbing equipment called the Cozy Down. We'll see a picture of it here in a moment. And we're also going to improve the parking lots. Right now, the ADA spaces are not ADA compliant. They're not wide enough. The ramps don't meet compliance, and the sidewalk is angled more than allowable. As you can see in this picture here, this is the current parking space. As I said, the parking spaces themselves are not ADA compliant. They're about 30 inches or so too narrow. These crosswalk sections right here leading up to the handicap ramps are about 30 inches too narrow. And the sidewalk going from the parking spaces into the park itself is outside the tolerance for as far as angle of the sidewalk. As I said, we're proposing to widen these parking spaces, install new ADA compliant ramps, and also widen the crosswalk areas. We're going to extend the current sidewalk up to the pavilion inside of Trey Park to make it accessible to people with mobility issues. Right now, it is not accessible. It's about 13 inches above the ground, so it's not accessible to anyone who may have mobility issues or is in a wheelchair. There are no ramps currently into that pavilion. We're also going to install some artificial grass over a concrete surface to put the inclusive play equipment on. And this provide recreational opportunities for potential users with mobility issues. And also, as I said, some of the pieces of play equipment for people who may have been diagnosed with autism. Here's a picture of the pavilion. As you can see, it is quite high off the ground. If you're in a wheelchair, you cannot access this pavilion. That's what we're proposing to run the sidewalk into this very front area. As you can see right here, that it'll go into this pavilion, it'll be a smooth transition. So anyone in a wheelchair or has other mobility issues can access the pavilion. Tennessee right now currently has what's called the Tennessee 2020 plan. They did update that recently. And part of our application has to discuss how our project meets some of the initiatives of the 2020 plan. We feel that it meets initiative number 3 and 5 of the Tennessee 2020 plan. Initiative number 3 states that all Tennesseans, regardless of where they live, will have access to consistent recreational services and close to home opportunities to enjoy recreation, exercise, and interaction with nature. As I said, this project will provide play opportunities for children with mobility issues and autism, give them an area to go to so they can get exercise, socialize with the peers, and then also enjoy the outdoors. Just provides more options to right now they don't have them. And it'll also, by running the sidewalk into this pavilion, it'll provide a covered seating area for everyone to use, but it'll also make it accessible for the first time with people who have mobility issues. We also believe our project will meet initiative number 5, which states that the TDEC and local parks will be active partners to encourage the population to increase their levels of activity and exercise by improving the ADA parking spaces, ramps, extending the sidewalk into the pavilion. That will encourage more people to use the park that may not use it right now. And also by including the inclusive play equipment will provide more exercise opportunities and opportunities to socialize with their peers, whether these are children or young adults. And this piece of play equipment in this picture is what's called a cozy dome. As you can see, children can climb on it, but also children with autism can get inside of it and use it as a cool down space. There will be 3 of these inside the project, and we'll show you those on a preliminary site plan a little bit later. The funding for this proposed project, as I said, this project is just to do a renovation of a section of Trey Park to make it, Trey Park is currently used as a playground, so it's obviously suitable as a playground. The space inside of it is relatively flat. It's currently used as a playground inside the Hartsville City Park. The total project cost, this is for the artificial turf, the concrete underneath it, the inclusive play equipment, extending the sidewalk, renovating the existing sidewalk, fixing the ADA parking spaces, crosswalks, and ramps, including also architects and engineering fees, and a 20% contingency fee or contingency cost. Total project cost is $188,304. We're proposing right now this grant, if we get it, will fund 50% of that, and the county would have to match the other 50%. This is a reimbursement, so the county would have to spend the total amount up front and then submit the remainder for reimbursement. That'll be done monthly as we go through the project. So the county's 50% share would be $94,152. The county does currently have enough in fund balance to cover this 50% match, and the county commission has indicated that they would be willing to fund this project if we get the grant. This is a topographical map of the project area. As you can see down here where it says Hartsville, Trousdale County, that's roughly where the park is. Excuse me, right down here we see Hartsville, you see a Trousdale County City Park. It's kind of in this wide area. It's one of the flatter areas around town. It is currently being used as a park, and Trey Park itself is currently being used as a playground. We're not proposing to expand Trey Park and make any changes outside of Trey Park itself other than the parking spaces and ADA access improvements to the sidewalk. So we're not proposing to expand the park any whatsoever. This is pretty much almost a 100% renovation of anything that's already there. This is a boundary map showing the project boundary. This area here shows the ADA parking spaces, the sidewalk coming into Trey Park, the pavilion, and then the area where the ADA accessible and inclusive play equipment is going to go. As I said, this is just pretty much ADA parking, ramps, sidewalk improvements, and then putting inclusive play equipment. And the project area itself is roughly 0.12 acres. Proposed project timeline is within 30 days of signing the grant contract or the beginning of the next fiscal year. After we've received the grant, we issue requests for qualifications for an engineering firm. Within 30 to 44 days, we'll receive a statement of qualifications of any interested firms. Within 44 to 50 days, we'll select an engineering firm. Within 6 months, have the project engineered, and within 6 to 12 months after that, begin a complete renovation of project at Trey Park. So we think within a year of either signing a grant contract or beginning of the fiscal year, this project will be completed. This is preliminary site plan. You can see in the upper left corner, there is the ADA parking space improvements and also the crosswalks that have to be widened out and ramp improvements. The section of the sidewalk going from the ADA parking spaces up to the pavilion in Trey Park will have to be removed and extended into Trey Park itself. As I said, that sidewalk right now is not currently ADA compliant. The angle of the sidewalk is outside the tolerances for ADA purposes. Here, kind of in the middle of the screen, you see 4 areas. The one that's on the far left is going to be the We Go Round, and the 3 other ones that are more colored in, those are going to be the cozy domes. As you can see on here, it's all labeled. The circles around those pieces of play equipment are fallout zones. That's just in case if children fall out, they don't hit anything that's too close to the piece of play equipment. There are some currently non-ADA compliant pieces of play equipment in that area that have to be removed. We're not getting rid of those pieces of equipment. We can put those in other areas of the park. So we will save those. It's just to make room for these improvements. So for the inclusive play equipment, we have to remove those. There's also a swing set that's near here that will also be inside, part of it be inside the project area. It'll have to be removed. It does not currently meet the ADA requirements. The fallout zone for that piece of play equipment would be 20 feet, and it's roughly 5 to 6 feet, so maybe even less than that to the fence and some of the other pieces of the play equipment. So it doesn't meet those requirements as there's not a sufficient fallout zone. Project design elements, going to be widening the current parking spaces, making the ramps ADA compliant, widening the crosswalks that are currently too narrow to meet ADA requirements. We're going to replace the current sidewalk, a section of the current sidewalk, and extend it into the pavilion that's inside Trey Park. That'll help meet ADA requirements, make that pavilion ADA compliant and accessible to anyone who may have mobility issues. We're going to remove and replace a non-inclusive play equipment with inclusive play equipment, that being the We Go Round and the Cozy Domes I spoken of earlier, and an installation of artificial grass in that area where the inclusive play equipment is going to go, and it should make it a better access to people who have mobility issues. Future development plans as part of the master plan that was done earlier this year and approved by the Parks and Recreation Committee in February of this year. The proposed plan was within 1 to 5 years, expand the sidewalks and walking trails, do some improvements to the tennis courts, addition of a pickleball court, and then utility upgrades and drainage improvements at the site. Within 5 to 10 years, do parking lot improvements, expansion of the skate park, installed wayfinding and general signage to give locations for the amenities inside the park, possibility of new pavilions, and then continued utility improvements. And in 10 plus years, maybe the addition of an indoor recreation center, reconfiguration of baseball fields, Trey Park improvements, and accompanying utility improvements. We went ahead and submitted Trey Park improvements, or at least some of the Trey Park improvements for this grant project. It really fits squarely with the grant project itself. There is a section of the application that is for if it's a 100% renovation of a project, we can include that in there. As I said, this is going to be a partial renovation of a section of Trey Park. Going to be doing ADA improvements for the sidewalk, parking area, and whatnot to make it more accessible. We believe that'll help us score better on the application. And as we went through the master planning process, the public gave input via online survey. There was an open house, and then worked with a steering committee to get their feedback. The number one voted area for improvements as far as the facilities at the park goes was Trey Park, specifically to make it more inclusive and to fix the ADA problems there. Given that this was the number one requested project in the master planning process, that's why we went ahead and submitted these improvements to Trey Park. What's next is we've had a public meeting with comment cards. I also had 2 meetings with civic organizations where they filled out comment cards and gave their feedback. This video of this presentation will be posted on Facebook and YouTube so people can comment there. You can also comment or send comments to contact@trousdalecountytn.gov. Make sure you include in the subject line LPRF comment, so we make sure that we keep track of those and submit comments along with our application. Any questions can be answered there. We also have here in the mayor's office a demonstration or for the artificial turf that's going to go down. If you want to see that, you can come in the mayor's office and we can show you that so you can get a look at it and get a better idea of what that turf is going to look like. Or if you just want to stop by and ask any other questions, we're more than happy to stop by. If I'm available, I'll answer any questions we can. So that's the presentation for right now. I appreciate anyone watching the video. If you're watching this on Facebook, please leave a comment. We'll keep track of those, and we'll submit those with the grant application. We'll be sure to answer any questions we can. As I've said, you can also stop by the mayor's office. If I'm available, answer any questions I can, or send your comments to contact@trousdalecountytn.gov, subject line LPRF comment, and we'll keep track of those and respond and answer any questions we can. So thank you very much for taking your time to watch this video or participate online.